A family with 5 generations living together in the Vietnamese countryside. When you hear that, you might imagine a crowded home, poverty, and a difficult life. But that is not what is happening here. This is a true story from my own grandparents' family. Today, my mother, the children, and I are going to visit them, bringing a few things from home and discovering what life is really like for this remarkable family. What is it really like when 5 generations live together? Come with me and let's discover the truth behind life inside this home. Hello everyone, my name is Hai. Do you often go back to visit your grandparents? For me, it has actually been quite a long time since I last had the chance to visit my maternal grandparents. So today, on a beautiful day, my mother, my nieces and nephews, and I are going back to the countryside to visit them. If you've been following my channel, you probably recognize this market. It's located very close to my home. This is a local market that operates on normal days. There are still vendors selling their goods, but it's not nearly as crowded as it is on market days. It's not a very large or busy market, but you can still find almost all the basic food and everyday necessities that people in this area need. For people living in the countryside, markets like this have probably become a very familiar part of everyday life. My grandparents also live quite far from the market, so whenever we visit them, there usually isn't much food already prepared at home. That's why my mother always stops by the market to buy some food before we head there. Nothing expensive or fancy, just simple, everyday food. My grandparents are getting quite old now, so they don't eat as much as they used to. In Vietnam, things like pork and tofu are very common in everyday family meals. My mother buys some ground pork and a few pieces of tofu so my grandparents can have something to cook for the next few meals. As she walks past the fruit stalls, if she sees some fresh and good-looking fruit, she buys a little more to bring as a gift for my grandparents. And the kids woke up quite early this morning and hadn't had breakfast yet, so my mother stopped by a banh mi stall and bought each of them one to eat along the way. Everything she buys is very simple. Nothing special or expensive, but I think whenever their children and grandchildren come home, bringing a little food and sitting down to share a meal with them, that's probably what makes my grandparents happiest. After buying all the food, my mother suddenly remembers something, and the last time she called my grandparents, they had asked her to bring them some baby chicks when she came to visit, so she stopped by a local poultry hatchery to buy some chicks. In the past, baby chicks like these were usually hatched naturally by their mother hens. But as technology has developed, people in the countryside often buy chicks that have already been hatched at specialized hatcheries. These chicks are carefully selected and raised from an early stage, making it easier for farmers to start a healthy flock and achieve better productivity. My mother chose a few healthy-looking chicks and carefully brought them along for my grandparents. So now we have food for my grandparents, fruit, banh mi for the kids, and even a few baby chicks. It looks like we've finally got everything we need for today's trip back to the countryside. Welcome to my grandparents' home. I helped my mother carry the things she had just bought into the house. My grandparents were very happy to see her. Grandma even jokingly complained, "It's been so long since you came to visit. Have you forgotten your old grandparents?" Hearing her say that made me feel happy, but also a little sad. For young people like us, when we are busy with work and everyday life, time seems to pass incredibly quickly. Sometimes an entire year goes by, and we only manage to visit our grandparents once, usually during Tet. But for elderly people, it is different. They spend most of their time at home, thinking about their children and grandchildren. Perhaps that is why time seems to move much more slowly for them. Every time I come back, I notice that my grandparents have grown a little older. But when they look at their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, they say, "You children are growing up so fast." One side sees the grandparents getting older, while the other sees the children growing up. That really is the way life works. As the old bamboo grows older, new shoots appear. Children grow up and move forward with their lives, while grandparents slowly grow older. It is simply a part of life that none of us can change. These sweet cakes may seem like an ordinary snack to people living in the city. If we want them, we can easily buy them anytime. But for my grandparents, it is different. In the countryside, snacks like these are not always readily available. Often, they only get to enjoy them when their children or grandchildren visit from the city. So whenever the family comes home, even bringing a few small cakes can make them very happy. Today, my grandparents sat together with their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, sharing the cakes. The cakes themselves were nothing special, but perhaps because they were eating them together with their family, they tasted much better. Sometimes happiness for elderly people is really that simple. They don't need expensive gifts. They just need their children and grandchildren to come home, sit beside them, and share a simple meal together. Sometimes that is more than enough. And now, I want to show you where my grandparents live in the Vietnamese countryside. Is their life really as difficult and lacking as what you often see online when people talk about rural Vietnam? Or is the reality completely different? Come with me and let's take a look at my grandparents' home and their everyday life. My grandparents live in the northwest of Vietnam. The population here is quite sparse, and houses are often located far away from one another. Each family usually has plenty of land around their home for growing crops, raising animals, and everyday activities. My grandparents' house was built about 40 years ago, following the traditional three-section house style that was common in this region. Of course, after 4 decades, the house has gone through several renovations and repairs. Each generation has added or changed something, which is why the house looks the way it does today. If you look at traditional houses from the past, you will notice that their layout was very different from modern homes. People did not usually divide the house into many separate rooms. The main living area was kept quite large and served as both a living room and a shared space for the whole family. There were usually beds placed on both sides of the main room, just like these. This design made good use of the available space while also reducing construction costs. The beds in the main room were traditionally used mainly by the men of the family for sleeping or resting. Women and family members who needed more privacy would usually use separate rooms further inside the house. Today, this type of house is no longer common in cities, but in rural areas, especially among families who have lived in the same place for generations, you can still find these traditional architectural features. These rooms and beds are simply places for the family to rest after a long and tiring day of work. They are not luxurious or modern like many bedrooms in the city. In fact, they can look a little messy at times. But this is simply the reality of my family's life. Most people here work from early morning until evening. After a long day of hard work, they come home exhausted. Sometimes all they want to do is lie down and sleep. They simply don't have the energy or the time to clean everything up. And my grandparents are already elderly, so moving around is no longer as easy for them as it used to be. For a young person, cleaning a room might only take a few minutes. But for an elderly person, even simple household chores can become difficult. So if you see that the rooms are a little messy, don't immediately assume that my grandparents are living in poor conditions or don't take care of their home. This is simply the evidence of a life spent working hard for many years for. Next, I want to show you my grandparents' storage area and bathroom. Because my grandparents work in agriculture, they have a lot of tools and equipment. That's why they have storage sheds located close to the house, where they can keep everything they need for farming. It's actually quite convenient. Whenever they need to work in the fields or around the house, they can simply go into the storage area, take the tools they need, and get to work. The bathroom and toilet are also built separately from the main living area, which makes everyday life more convenient for everyone. And there is something that might surprise some of you. Even though my grandparents live in the countryside, they still have most of the basic electronic appliances needed for everyday life. There's a fairly large television, a refrigerator, a washing machine, and a water purifier. Things that might once have been considered modern conveniences, mainly found in cities, are now quite common in rural Vietnam as well. These appliances are widely available in Vietnam and come in many different price ranges, so working families in the countryside can gradually afford them too. In many ways, the gap in living conditions between cities and rural areas has become much smaller than it was in the past. However, there is one thing my grandmother still prefers to use: a traditional wood-burning stove. It's not because the family doesn't have a modern stove. There's simply plenty of firewood available in the countryside. And because my grandmother often cooks food for the family's livestock, using firewood can be much more economical. This is my aunt, my mother's younger sister. She is now over 40 years old. She was born with a heart condition, so her health and development have been different from those of most people. She never got married and continues to live here with my grandparents. Her daily work mainly involves raising chickens and pigs and taking care of simple chores around the house. Her life is very simple, spending each day here with my grandparents and taking care of the family's animals. My grandparents had 7 children. My mother's their second child. When they were younger, I don't think my grandparents ever imagined that as they grew old, some of their children would still be living with them in this house. Today, 2 of their children are still here. Both are over 40 and have never married. One of them is my aunt. Because of her health condition, she has not been able to live the same kind of life as most other people. The other is my uncle. Because of difficult family circumstances and financial hardship, he has also never been able to start his own family. Everyone has a different story. Some children leave their hometown to find work. Some get married and build lives of their own, but some remain in this house, spending their days with their parents, taking care of the home, and helping with the family's work. Perhaps that's why to my grandparents this house is much more than just a place to live. My mother walked around the house and noticed that things were a little messy, so she decided to help my grandparents tidy up a bit. It wasn't anything major, just putting a few things back in place and cleaning up some areas that needed attention. But for my grandparents, perhaps these small gestures mean a lot. As children grow older, everyone eventually has their own life, and we can't always be there to take care of our parents. So whenever their children and grandchildren come home, even helping with a few chores, bringing some things they need, or simply sitting beside them and talking can make the house feel a little happier and warmer. My mother said that every time she comes here and sees that my grandparents are still healthy like this, she is already very happy. As we grow older, we begin to understand that none of us can escape the natural cycle of birth, aging, illness, and death. When people reach my grandparents' age, we can never know which visit might be our last. Today, we may still be sitting here together, talking, laughing, and sharing a meal, but none of us knows how long these ordinary moments will last. So if you still have grandparents, try to make more time to visit them. You don't need to bring expensive gifts. Sometimes, simply coming home, sitting beside them, asking how they are, and sharing a meal together can be the greatest gift of all. Looking at my grandparents today, I also looked at my mother, and suddenly I realized that she is getting older too. One day, I will probably stand where my mother is standing today. I will be the one bringing my own children back to visit their grandparents. Perhaps only then will I truly understand how my mother feels today. Time keeps moving. Our grandparents grow old, our parents grow old, and one day we will grow old too. So while we still can, let's go home. Because some ordinary moments we have today may one day become the memories we wish we could experience just one more time. My mother told me that my grandparents really love jackfruit, so every time she visits them, she always tries to find a really good one to bring along. Looking around the house, you can see that there are quite a lot of children here. Besides my own children, these are also my grandparents' great-grandchildren and descendants from the younger generations. More specifically, these children belong to the 5th generation of our family. And I think that's something quite special that you don't see in every family. Their parents are working for companies and are often busy with their jobs. Since they can't stay home and take care of the children all day, they sometimes bring them here and leave them with their great-grandparents while they are away working. Fortunately, these children are already old enough to take care of many things themselves. They can eat, play, and do most of their daily activities without needing much help. So my grandparents don't have to take care of them every minute. They mainly keep an eye on the children, making sure they are safe and have someone around while their parents are away at work. Watching the children running around the yard and then looking at my grandparents sitting inside the house made me realize what it really means to have a multi-generational family. There are elderly people, adults, and children all living and growing together. One generation follows another. Perhaps the most valuable thing isn't how big or modern a house is. It's having a home where generations of the same family can still be together, look after one another, and grow old together. In Vietnam, especially in rural areas, it is still common to see families with several generations living under the same roof. And it's not simply a way of living passed down through generations, it is also an important part of Vietnamese family culture. Grandparents help take care of their grandchildren. Parents raise their children, and the youngest generation grows up surrounded by the whole family. Everyone has a different life and different circumstances, but when someone needs help, there is always family to rely on. That is the connection, love, and support that hold a family together. In modern life, when everyone is becoming busier and building their own separate lives, moments when several generations can still gather under the same roof feel even more precious. And for me, being able to see my grandparents, my mother, my children, and the generations that come after us still sharing the same home, that is something I truly treasure. After showing you around the house, my mother and I started preparing lunch. My mother prepared the chicken while I went into the kitchen to make a few simple dishes. There may not be as many different kinds of food in the countryside as there are in the city, but chicken is almost always available. The family raises chickens right here in the yard, so whenever they need one, they can simply prepare one for a meal. The same goes for vegetables. There's no need to go far. Whatever's growing in the garden can become part of the meal. Today we had some vegetables and a few loofah gourds to cook for lunch. Grandma is still quite healthy, so she came over to help us. She sat down and peeled the loofah while chatting with everyone. Simple tasks like this have probably been part of her everyday life for decades. Grandpa, however, has become much weaker. While everyone was preparing lunch, he lay down on the bed and took a nap. Watching him, I suddenly realized that my grandparents have truly entered a different stage of life. When they were younger, they were probably the ones who woke up earliest, worked the hardest, and took care of the whole family. But now, when their children and grandchildren come home, everyone wants to take care of them instead. That's simply how life goes. Once, grandparents took care of their children. Now their children and grandchildren take care of them. While my mother and I were preparing lunch, she talked with my grandparents as she prepared the chicken. She said that these days, whenever she comes here, she doesn't ask for much. As long as she can see that her parents are still healthy, still eating well, still able to walk around and talk with their children and grandchildren, she is already happy. When my grandparents were younger and healthier, their children could leave home to find work and come back only once every few months. Nobody thought too much about it, but as our parents grow older, we begin to understand that the time we have left with them is not unlimited. My mother told me that when she was growing up, there were 7 children in the family. My grandparents had to work incredibly hard to raise all of them. When we were children, we thought everything our parents did was simply normal. They worked, earned money, cooked meals, took care of their children day after day. But after becoming parents ourselves, we begin to understand how much our grandparents sacrificed to raise such a large family. Back then, my grandparents took care of their children. Now their children have grown up. Everyone has their own work and their own family, and no one can stay beside their parents every day like they once did. My mother said one thing she regrets is that when her parents were still healthy, she didn't spend enough time with them. She always thought there would be plenty of time to come home later. But when parents grow old, we realize that time doesn't wait for anyone. That's why whenever my mother comes home, she tries to bring something my grandparents love. If they like jackfruit, she looks for a good one. If there is a dish they enjoy, she tries to bring it home. These things may not cost much money, but seeing her parents happy makes it all worthwhile. My mother doesn't know how many more times she will be able to come back here, so every time she does, she wants to do something for them. Clean the house, prepare a meal, sit down and talk with them. They may seem like small things, but perhaps this is how children show their love to their parents when they grow old. She simply hopes her parents will stay healthy for as long as possible, so that children like her will always have a place to come home to. And perhaps the greatest happiness for an adult isn't how much money we make. It's knowing that after all the busy days out there, our parents are still here, waiting for us to come home. The smell of food from Grandma's kitchen slowly began to fill the whole house. The children playing outside started to notice it too. They kept running in and out, sometimes standing at the kitchen door looking in sync, then running back outside to play. It seemed like their little stomachs were starting to get hungry. Eventually, all the food was ready. I went into the main room to tidy things up, laid a mat on the floor, and started arranging the food. In the countryside, a family meal doesn't need a fancy dining table. All you need is a simple mat, a few hot dishes placed in the middle, and everyone sitting around together. Grandparents, parents, children, and grandchildren all gathering in one place. I think that's what I love most about family meals the countryside. The food may be very simple, but when the whole family sits together, it somehow becomes a very special meal. So today I took you around my grandparents' home, a house that has stood for more than 40 years in the countryside of Northwest Vietnam. If you ask whether life here is difficult or lacking, I think the answer depends on how we choose to look at it. The house is old, and some places are still a little messy. Life here doesn't have all the modern comforts you might find in the city. But my grandparents have electricity, a television, a refrigerator, a washing machine, and simple meals made from chickens raised in the yard and vegetables picked from the garden. More importantly, they still have their family around them. Today, this house is home to my grandparents, my mother, me, the children, and 5 generations of our family are still connected to this place. Perhaps that's what makes this home so special to me. Life may not be perfect, but the love within a family can still be priceless. And today, I also realize how quickly time is passing. The children running around this yard today will grow up one day. My grandparents are still sitting here today, but one day we may no longer have the chance to see them again. And someday we will become the grandparents that our own children and grandchildren come home to visit. So if you still have grandparents or parents, try to make time to visit them. You don't need to bring expensive gifts. Sometimes a trip home, a simple meal, or just sitting down and talking with them can be enough to make their entire day. Thank you for coming home with me and discovering my grandparents' life in rural Vietnam. If you enjoy real stories about family and everyday life in rural Vietnam, stay with me and join me in the next videos. See you next time. Come and have a meal with my family. It's a simple countryside meal, but it's filled with the love of grandparents, parents, and the whole family. I hope that through these videos you won't just see what life is like in a Vietnamese countryside home, but also feel a little of the warmth, kindness, and family love that Vietnam has to share with you.
Đến một thế vào. Đến một chưa? Đến ngồi này trên chiêng không ra hôm nào.
Tụi con nào.
Gì? Con lấy áo sơ.
Con này có.
Lấy thìa xúc đi con. Đây. Con này hả? Cái này rồi. Đây đây. Được hả? Ăn không để này nó đây này.
Trong ngày này không nghỉ rồi.
Cái này này. Cái này nó tài nó thịt này đứa này.
Đi chơi cùng cùng.
Nó quay lên mạng tớ. Tối là làm gì? Nó thả cái chiều về nhà thế đây nhiều khi trả thì có. Nên là thử nó mà chứ ăn thì bông đấy.
Con nát rồi.
Này con đang đi. Với này. Bình Tiến ăn miếng nào?
Đây anh đi luôn. Rồi luôn.
Ăn luôn. Lai à? Con ăn thịt băm gì ấy đi. Ăn thịt băm đi nhá. Không canh. Ăn thịt băm. Này vậy. Đấy, ngoan hết nhỉ? Mẹ.
Con nói, con ba, con 5 tuổi, nó phải 3 tuổi.
Rồi con cả. Ui. Đây, thử đi táo. Táo cho con táo.
Đấy, giờ
Cho con là. Tháng này đang trốn đi thì cùng có đuổi theo. Cứ hả dọn đi mới. Thật con này lên thử đi giờ. Ăn, tẩy nào đi đâu hết rồi.
Cho con như thế chứ nhỉ?
Mua cái múc vào cho cái thứ nữa là đủ.
cái báo của con là
Ăn thịt băm. Băm này mua đến chợ ngon á. Nhưng mà con mèo nó cắn chết. Liếm sao nó cắn vào là cái chiêm phát sổ điền người nó kêu nó xèo mồm mép lời chết đấy. Tao ngồi thẳng lên để bán nào. Hả? Sao mẹ ăn thịt? Đi bao giờ này? Hả? Ăn đi bán thịt gà nữa không? Hả? Có phải kể đến thịt gà đây? Có ai thịt ăn chả?
Cứ là hết cái cả không?
Nó bảo anh ăn một miếng để đây. Phần gà có sắt. Để đây. Giò. Ai chả á. Ngon à? Cái này nó ăn ít như thịt lắm.
Không có gọi gì à?
Đúng không? Vui à? Này đi này. Nhà con cho bầu này này. Ơi, bắt nhau. Thì kia. Kia. Xuống ăn đi.
Giờ mình cũng về làm việc.
Con bé này.
Dạ.